Well, you're level 100, you're in Hell difficulty, or you've just killed Mevius in Hell and now you're at the endgame. What now? I get a lot of newer players just discovering this awesome game coming to my stream chat and asking questions like, what do I do at 100? What do I do after clearing Hell? How'd you get up on the counter? How do I start or approach the endgame? Today, I'll answer 3 of those 4 questions. Let's start with the beginning, level 100. This is the start of your endgame journey. You'll likely reach 100 mid-progression through Hell 1. I specify Hell 1 as there are 5 difficulties of Hell that we'll go into later. Your first priority is to kill Mevius so that you unlock Satanic zones as a mechanic, the first endgame activity we'll talk about, though likely not the first you'll see, as a lot of these mechanics that I'm going to mention have already spawned in your maps and you've either interacted with them or ignored them or seen them out of the corner of your eye. To unlock Satanic zones in each Hell difficulty, you just need to kill Mevius. Killing Mevius in Hell 1 unlocks Hell 2 and 3, and killing him in 3 unlocks 4 and 5. Killing Mevius in Hell 3 will get you Satanic zones for 3 and 2, and funnily enough, you only need to kill him in Hell 4 to get Satanic zones to unlock for Hell 5. This means you can do an easier version of the fight on Hell 4 to unlock your last Satanic difficulty, and this can be nice for undergeared players or newer players approaching the game. Now let's talk about Satanic zones. Once they're unlocked, they'll show up on your map pretty obviously. They're big and glowing in red with clouds over them. The zone gets corrupted and gets several positive and negative modifiers. These are your first option for endgame. You can travel from zone to zone as they swap, which happens every 30 minutes, killing monsters and getting loot. Satanic zone modifiers are always randomized, and some that I personally prefer are Angelic drop chance, Heroic drop chance, Increased loot proc chance, Ancient packs, Respawn as Legion, and Goblins. EXP and gold are nice too, but only in zones I prefer. If you don't care for the mods on a Satanic zone, or you just don't like the zone, like Corrupted Cave, you can go do other activities or your preferred farming area or method. Next up, let's talk about difficulties. As we mentioned, there's Hell 1 through 5, but there's a difficulty above 5 that was added this season called Inferno. Inferno is a step up for more magic finds, stronger monsters, and loot from bosses that is only dropped when killing them on Inferno difficulty. These things make it very sought after, and it's the very, very endgame of Hero Siege. However, it's not easy to unlock. I'd like to mention that the way I consider Inferno is aspirational content. Not everyone's going to get there, and not everyone really needs to. The unfortunate fact of Inferno and the way it currently works in the season, and will most likely be changed in future updates, is that by the time you can actually fight these bosses due to the materials they take to summon, you're way too strong for Inferno. Nothing's really a challenge, you just get there to farm. And the only reason to do Inferno over Hell 5 is the specific boss drops and a little more magic find outside of the bosses. If these two things aren't really appealing to you, you can just farm Hell 5. Most people make all their money there, and make most of their living there. I'd say 90% of the player base isn't even in Inferno. Well, given all that, the question is, how do I unlock Inferno? If that's something you're looking to do in this season, you have to kill 2 very specific bosses. Get to Hell 5, go ahead and get the quest from Act 1. This quest will specify you need to kill Gabriel and Amun-Ra. I call them Uber bosses as they're a step up from the usual Uber bosses you encounter in Endgame. Now you're asking, well, how do I fight them? Well, let's go over how you summon them before I go over the basic Uber bosses, since they're kind of connected. I'll start with Amun-Ra. Amun-Ra needs 2 items to fight. A Karakin key that lets you enter Karakin Hollow in the Pyramid level 1 of Act 3. These are a random drop or can be purchased from players. And inside Karakin Hollow, you'll need an Ankh of Eternal Death to enter the Amun-Ra fight. The Ankh takes 50 Scrolls of Ra, an Angelic key, and 2 Etched Sigils to craft. Angelic keys can be purchased or dropped. Etched Sigils come from merchants at a rate of 500k gold before discounts. Scrolls of Ra, however, well, they can't be bought or sold on the market, and if you want to buy them from other players, you'll need to look either in-game trade chat, or I highly suggest going to the Hero Siege Discord and checking out the trading channels. A lot of people buy and sell them there. You could also pop into my Twitch stream chat or check on my Discord. There's plenty of people there that play trade still, or some of us who would just part with our scrolls for an adequate price. As for where to get them in-game, well, there are shrines called Shrines of Destruction. They look very Anubis-like, as Amun-Ra is essentially just Uber Anubis. When you click them, they'll either spawn a bunch of useless snake monsters that don't drop anything, or a chest. The chest will contain 1 or multiple Scrolls of Ra and some loot. This is a slow process to self-farm and is ideally done in a dungeon like 3-3 since it holds a lot of shrines available to you. Once you have these items, you can combine them and fight Amun-Ra. A challenging encounter depending on your gear and experience that has some pretty specific breakpoints. Requires a decent mix of AoE damage as well as single target damage. Ideally suggesting 1 to 1.7 billion AoE DPS to clear without trouble. AoE DPS can be tested on the Dummies and Astral Encampment in Act 7. I'm not 100% sure about this number, but it was suggested to me originally when fighting Amun-Ra, and it seems to track with his intermission phases where the ads can overwhelm you easily if your damage is not high enough. Gabriel is the next Uber boss, and well, getting to him is a bit more complex. In order to fight Gabriel, you need an item called Soul of Hatred. Soul of Hatred is created by crafting 9 souls, 3 from each of the 3 Uber bosses. 3 Despair from Uber Reaper, 3 Anguish from Uber Damien, and 3 Corruption from Sung Lee. Let's review how we get these. Uber Reaper exists in Shadow Realms, represented by a glowy purple symbol with Reaper's face on it on your map, and a big purple portal on screen. Once inside, you'll find and fight high-level monsters that all have a chance to drop dimensional shards. And there's even a vendor who jacks up his prices like a movie theater concession stand because he's a dick. The Glyph Shadow helps spawn more Shadow Realms if you're having trouble finding them. Dimensional shards are the key item here. You can get them in the Shadow Realm, from Shrines of Dimension, or sometimes random treasure goblins drop them. With 40 shards, you can talk to a Sheen near the broken gateway inside Shadow Realm. She'll open a portal to Uber Reaper in exchange for the shards. Once you kill Reaper, he dies, you get loot, and maybe a Soul of Despair. Sung Li is found in the Eternal Battlefield, represented on your map by a red circle icon, and the same on the screen. When you get close to an Eternal Battlefield, it'll spread out and monsters will begin to rapidly spawning. This is similar to the Breach mechanic in Path of Exile if you're familiar with that game and that mechanic. These monsters have a chance to drop an item called Battle Fragments, an extremely rare and valuable item that you're going to need a whopping 50 of to enter the battlefield and fight this boss. These are so rare that this can be extremely tasking to self-farm in the game's current state as of this video. Here's a tip. Satanic zones with increased ancient pack size or extra loot proc can help get more fragments from Battlefield. It makes it a little less painful. The glyph named Battle helps spawn more battlefields when used. Once you have 50 fragments and the circle closes down, you can go into the Eternal Battlefield, finding Sung Li in a castle in the middle. This is your chance at a Soul of Corruption. Be warned, he has a ton of HP compared to the other bosses, and he can be kind of a hard encounter. Next up is Uber Damien. This one is a long process, though a recent patch made the drop rates for it much more approachable. To fight Uber Damien, you need the Key of Terror, which is crafted. To craft it, you need a boss part from each boss up to Satan. So Gurag, Reaper, Anubis, Damien, Carp, and Satan. Being a teleport class with this high single target DPS helps to farm this immensely, but it's pretty straightforward. Go kill the bosses, hope for the drops, combine them into a key, fight Uber Damien. The Glyph of Primeval helps a lot with boss part drop rates. Once you get the key, you talk to in Anoia in Act 1. He'll let you use the key to go to Fallen Anoia to fight Uber Damien. This is your chance at a Soul of Anguish. Ideally, you fight all these bosses on Hell 5 difficulty because that guarantees a piece of their loot to drop. Now you killed the bosses. Well, here's the problem. Soul drops are a low chance. They aren't guaranteed. Getting 3 souls from each isn't always the easiest or quickest. Sometimes it's faster to buy them off trade if that's available to you. However, once you have them, you can craft the Soul Hatred, you can fight Gabriel. Now, here's the kicker to both of these fights. If you die to Gabriel or Amun-Ra, you have to farm another key. You get 1 attempt and that's it. Be highly aware of this when preparing to fight these bosses, as it can be devastating to lose so much time. And the encounters are not a joke unless you severely outgear and out DPS them, which is what most players prefer to do just for the safety of their own time. I will say I've seen some reports that with Gabriel, and I've experienced on my own, that if you do get him to his second phase, even if you die, the fight counts for the quest. Amun-Ra, however, is just extremely difficult if you don't have the damage. Once Gabriel and Amun-Ra have been defeated, you now have Inferno unlocked and have achieved the highest difficulty. Now you can enjoy harder monsters, increase magic find, and fight bosses with more HP and damage and potentially expensive, powerful Inferno-specific item drops. Well, is that it, you're probably asking? Is that the whole game? No. Like I said, Inferno's aspirational content. Everything I'm about to talk about can be done on any Hell difficulty, ideally Hell 5, but you work your way there. You're not going to jump there immediately unless you're an extremely meta and powerful class with a good investment. Let's talk about the other in-game activities. All of them are available on Hell difficulties and Inferno. First off, let's talk about a mechanic I briefly mentioned when going over the bosses, and that's Glyphs. And when we're talking about Glyphs, we need to talk about dungeons. Upon entering Hell, you'll notice a nice lady outside of all the dungeons in the acts. When speaking to her, she's offering you the ability to use specific dungeon keys that each dungeon has their own of to go inside a challenge dungeon. These dungeons cost 1, 3, 6, or 12 keys, scaling the difficulty and reward for each. This is how you acquire Glyph experience and drop Glyphs. Glyph experience, as far as I've seen, is equaled out across challenge levels. So if you ran 1 key challenge dungeons 12 times, you'd get the same Glyph experience as running a single 12 key challenge dungeon. It's a time saver more than anything. Where the 6 and 12 keys shine, though, is that they seem to drop more Glyphs. The Glyph chance does go up, making them drop more. I've seen a lot of people saying running 1 keys doesn't drop many, but 12 keys drops several. Keep this in mind if you want some Glyph drops. On trade, you can always buy them on the market, though. Glyphs come with some random percentage modifier on them. This changes how much a Glyph is affected by the attributes around it. This is why you'll see most players aiming for Glyphs with 90% quality or higher, as it directly affects the power of the Glyph. Glyphs are slotted into your hero tree, and each Glyph has its own attributes it's affected by. If you hover over a Glyph after slotting it, you can see the radius of the effect, and any attributes the Glyph specifies on it will increase the inherent modifier. Dungeons are a mechanic designed around Glyphs and Glyph experience. Glyph experience can be spent at the end of a dungeon and lets you level up Glyphs up to level 7. Be aware that level 7 on a Glyph is a heavy key and time investment, which is why players prefer to spend it on 90% or higher quality Glyphs to save their time and effort, and they also prefer to find other players to do key rotations with. If in trade, finding other players means you can pool your keys or rotate keys to help each other out. Please do be aware though, when you're grouping, there's a lot of crash issues with dungeons. Make sure one of the preventative methods you try to use is go into the zone one at a time when entering the dungeon. Try not to go all in at once, and try not to start killing everything until everyone's loaded in. This does help alleviate crash issues. Other than the glyphs and the glyph experience, it's just a harder dungeon where monsters have a bunch of added mechanics, usually death rattles, because those are totally fun to deal with. Once all monsters are dead, you can open a chest at the end and get no loot because that chest sucks, and you can spend your glyph XP if you choose. You can also just save your glyph XP as long as you like. Be warned, getting a glyph to level 7 takes a very long time and over 500,000 glyph experience. However, it's very worth it on ones that can make you a lot of money, and it is definitely a solid in-game activity to participate in. The good thing about glyphs is you can also transfer them between characters. Next up after dungeons, we have Chaos Towers. Chaos Towers are another mechanic you may have seen while going through the campaign. They're represented by a big spooky walking tower on your map and screen. Approaching the front of them causes them to sit down and allow you to walk inside. Once inside, you can talk to the NPC and start a tower run. New to this season, the 10-floor encounter now has a roguelike element. Each floor you pick one of 3 negative effects that can do things from add hazards to the map, make the monster stronger or faster, or give them new abilities. Or they could just debuff you significantly. These effects last for the entire tower run, so what you pick on floor 1 is on every floor all the way to 10, and so on. Each floor there's also a random positive modifier. This could be things like high runes drop at the end of the tower, you get increased MF for the monsters you kill, or you get an angelic key, sometimes even a guaranteed heroic item. Each floor after killing the waves of enemies that spawn and the champion monsters that spawn halfway through, you're rewarded with some loot and move on to the next floor. After 10 floors, you get the 10th floor loot, any loot from the modifiers, and a portal to the Colosseum opens. This is to fight the tower boss and requires 50 Colosseum fragments, which drops so rarely I have no idea how anyone is ever supposed to be able to fight this character. These fragments can also only be traded player to player and cannot be posted on the market, similar to the Scrolls of Ra. Chaos Towers are a good mechanic if you're in need of angelic keys, but they're somewhat of a gamble. As you ascend in floors, the monsters become naturally tankier and do more damage. Combining this with the random negative effects you have, it can be really deadly really fast. And when you die, it's over, making it sometimes not worth the time or reward. But it can pay off, and it's a different neat mechanic to try. I'm not opposed to it, and I definitely think in SSF it has a lot more viability because of the very common angelic key drops. Another endgame activity is Bifrost keys. Bifrost keys are highly sought after item because of what they can offer when used. In Act 7 at the Astral Encampment in the top right corner, you can use them in the key pedestal and head across the magic bridge. When you reach the end, the NPC will offer 2 options. This is a gamble part of the mechanic and where it becomes so expensive and why. There's a lot of common options that are so-so and sometimes okay for rewards. Sheeponia is the most common and saves you the cost of a pass logo, even though they're usually cheaper than Bifrost keys. In Sheeponia, you may end up finding Steep's necklace or Sheep King's set piece. Good items worth significant gold, but extremely rare drops. After Sheeponia, there's Niflheim, where a lot of runes drop, Asgard, where you can mine ore if you have 1,000 mining, and open chests and shrines, Rift of Fortune, where you can get lots of gold and lots of dimensional shards, or lots of disappointment, Mists of Chaos, where there's a bunch of chaos shrines and awful terrain that you have to constantly jump over. There's also a chance to get a Chaos Tower or a challenge dungeon. The real things people want in this is the Uber Boss or Vanaheim option. Uber Boss is as it says. You either get Sung Lee, Reaper, or Uber Damien, chosen at random, allowing you to fight the boss without farming the normal materials needed. This is why the keys are so pricey, and this is a good way to farm them in Inferno for great loot. Vanaheim is its own mechanic. At a 3% chance to spawn, it allows you to go in and talk to Luna. Luna gives you a quest called Fortune Told, which dictates that you have to kill a certain number of monsters. The quest will also tell you the guaranteed SS Heroic item you're going to get from it. So here's how that works. Once you kill all these monsters, a portal will spawn, so you must keep an eye on this quest. If you miss the portal, you have to spam keys or have a friend find Vanaheim for you to join in on with a key for you to get there and talk to her and finish the quest. The portal will spawn on the monster killed that completes the kill count, not on top of you. If the monster's off screen, you'll have to find it. If you spawn the portal and die, or leave the area before going through it, the portal vanishes and you have to spam Bifrost keys for Vanaheim. Friends or party members cannot see your portal and cannot go in with you unless their own portal procs as well in the same game. Once you enter Vanaheim again, you go to Luna to turn the quest in. Oh wait, she's evil now or something. Now you have to do the fight. Luna's a challenging encounter for 2 reasons. She has more HP than other Uber bosses, and she also has a debuff that will remove 75% of your arcane resistance. So it's suggested to overcap your arcane res to 150% if possible, or as high as you can get below that. If you defeat Luna in Hell 5, you get a guaranteed piece of her special loot and your own quest item that was from the quest. For difficulty, I believe it's 20% chance per starting at Hell 1 and going up to 100% at Hell 5 to get her loot, and I think this follows with every boss. If you aren't confident in your damage or skill at the fight, and the item from her quest is actually worth a lot of money or very valuable to you, or you just really need it, I suggest dropping to Hell 1 before you proc your Vanaheim portal from the quest. That way, she's significantly weaker, and you can beat her and guarantee the item. Well, that's it, right? Nope. Wormholes, a mechanic you can go to in Act 1 in Anoia upon entering Hell. Wormholes are more of a side activity, but are considered very endgame. They have their own leaderboards and they offer special seasonal cosmetic rewards for clearing difficulties 50, 75, and 100. And many people compete to push as high as they can, as you gain a special symbol and title on your name depending on your rank. The cosmetics unlocked are unlocked for use on the next season, so if you did Wormholes to 100 this season, you'd unlock your cosmetics on Season 7 launch. Wormholes are like greater rifts from Diablo 3, if you're familiar with that mechanic at all. They're usually the same set of linear maps. You have to kill every monster on the map as fast as possible on your way to the end. At the end, once all enemies are dead, the timer pauses and the boss spawns. Kill the boss and you get loot and unlock more wormhole levels. How many wormhole levels you unlock depends on how much time you have left, indicated by little boxes on the timer at the top of the screen. As a bonus, wormholes give a small amount of glyph experience that you can save up and spend in challenge dungeons. That wraps up the majority of the mechanics at Endgame, unless you consider jewel crafting and mining as well, but those are more of a profession, and while are something you focus on more at Endgame, they're less of a full mechanic and just part of the game from the start. Hero Siege is an excellent ARPG with a ton of different encounters and mechanics to engage with. You can choose which you prefer or which you need to engage with to build your character and become strong. If you want an idea of what's profitable, you can check my quick guide to making early gold if you just hit level 100 and are a new player on Trade. It's linked in the description. Other than that, let me know in the comments if this video helps you or other information you'd like to see, and feel free to drop by on my stream and hang out with a gaming cat. We're happy to answer questions or give advice to the community, and we're all pretty chill. I'm live usually 4 to 6 days a week, and always gaming. I'll most likely make another video detailing the encounters and the boss fights that I listed in this video, giving a rundown on how to do them and what the mechanics are like. But I need to get more footage of those boss fights because right now I'm a little too overgeared to actually show all the mechanics. Thank you so much for watching. I'm SleepyCat, and I'm tired. Good night.